I'm David Ainsworth, Head of Communications at the United Nations Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. In today's Biodiversity Beat interview at Substa 26, we're talking to Simangele Msweli, who's the Senior Manager of the Youth Leadership Program of the African Wildlife Foundation. Simangele, good to talk to you.
Thanks. Great to have me here.
So you've been working in this policy space for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how youth inclusion has evolved since you started?
Yeah. So my first CBD meeting, policy making meeting, was in 2012, and I was 19 years old, still a teenager, but interested in biodiversity over the last. There's been a lot of positive improvements that I've seen. So for instance, in those years, we didn't even have an official youth constituency. Now we do, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, which is a platform by which youth are formally engaging in the CBD process. At that time, also, the GIBIN was formed, but it was more active internationally. We didn't really have a lot of African youth engaging there. But now, 10 years later, we have more than 30 GIBIN chapters in Africa. And I am glad that back then I was part of the team that started the South African Youth Biodiversity Network in South Africa, and working alongside either very passionate and capable young people. We worked in our countries to ensure that youth can contribute, but it was positive to see that even the CBD itself was receptive to having youth. So I've seen very great growth, not only in the context of youth in numbers, but also in the context of the quality that they bring in the discussions and the nature of the sessions that they are allowed to join in and engage.
I'm even struck there was an information product they put together a few years ago, CBD in a Nutshell, which remains one of the best ways of communicating what this convention does.
Most definitely. And I remember in the second edition, I was part of the team that reviewed the first edition so that we could have the second edition. So it's been remarkable to see that youth have not only been engaging in the sidelines, but within the process itself and driving it where possible.
So let's turn to the biodiversity plan now. So just taking a look at it now, and from the perspective of the work you've been doing, what stands out most for you within this plan?
There's two things that stand out most for me. One, I'm very happy to see that the plan is adequately balancing the three objectives of the convention: conservation, sustainable use, as well as access and benefit sharing. But second one, being someone who grew from the youth movement, I'm happy to see that we have Target 22, which clearly spells out the need to be engaging youth, as well as other groups, women, indigenous peoples, and local communities. So that for me is very remarkable, because we need a whole of society approach. Even though this is a framework and that was adopted by countries, it belongs to all of us, and the responsibility to implement is with all of us. And I believe with that target, it captures that spirit.
So, in that spirit right there, what will you and the African Wildlife Foundation be doing to engage with the biodiversity plan?
I can speak of whole day, but I'm only going to touch on two things today because we don't have the whole day. One of the initiatives that we are implementing at the African Wildlife Foundation is the AWF Charles Outwall Youth Leadership Program. It has two tracks. There's a track that is really building the skills of youth on international biodiversity governance. We need youth to understand how these processes work, the how, the when, and the who of engaging in policy processes. This is a 9 months training that takes young professionals through all of that, and they join the AWF delegation to attend some of these meetings. It also has a track on conservation leadership and management. In as much as we need people driving policy, we also need people driving action in the ground. And the track on leadership and management is really dedicated to those change makers on the ground, to give them skills on self-leadership, how to lead teams, and organizational leadership. Now, the last example I will mention of the work that we are doing to drive Target 22 and the whole biodiversity plan, we really believe in the power of youth networks. They exist, they understand their context best, they speak the language that most of their youth understand. And in Africa, young people under the age of 35 are already making up 70% of the population. So we partner with youth networks to drive action. Specifically, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Africa chapter of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, and a flagship initiative under the is the African Youth Summit on Biodiversity. I would love to claim that we are ahead. In a sense that as soon as the framework was adopted in 2022, with this initiative, we hosted a summit in Morocco in order to socialize the framework amongst youth and mobilize them to act. The session had a clear track on project pitch competitions where African youth really entered amazing innovative project ideas that they will put forward to champion the GBF across the other targets, not just targets 22, and we will be launching that brochure soon. So I think I'll keep it there before I keep you for the whole day, yeah?
Great. Well, this means we're just going to need to speak again at COP16 in Colombia, and we can talk about what youth has done in the in-between leading up to it. And we look forward to having you in the African Wildlife Foundation with us there as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
It's a
Simangele.
pleasure.
Thanks.